Akbara, and welcome to lesson 410. Being that this is an even number in the 400 series, we're going to primarily focus on the Hebrew Bantu language and its translation back into, of course, the African languages. I want to dedicate this, or the majority of this information, to a sister from the Oja Media Group, because if you go back to my lesson 406, I went through a word or a couple of words which were in Hebrew spelled with I-G-B-O-R-A and A-G-B-A-R-A. And I mispronounced those words as Ajbara and Ishbora. And this sister from the Oja Media Group took the time to send me a video that she created to show me, teach me, and correct me in that pronunciation. And I want to thank her for doing that. And this was some time ago, and I've thanked her to herself. But I want to thank her in the lesson, because that led me also to find other words in Hebrew that directly translate back into Yoruba. When looking at that letter combination, GB, that she taught me how to correctly pronounce, these words become even more apparent in the study of and translation of these languages. And I want to share some of the information that I found pertaining to the proper translation of that letter combination, GB. But before I do that, I want to go off of the lesson topic, because everything that we discuss is on topic when it's dealing with our people. And I want to say that I've had, as you notice, a very obvious hiatus from doing the lessons. But that's because realization started to come about. And I want you all to really take seriously what we are attempting to do and what we try to do, not only in disseminating this knowledge, but in what the purpose of disseminating the knowledge is for. Because it's good to know it. It's good to get into battles, and it's good to do certain things with it. But specifically, it may be good to know it, but it's even better to apply it. It's better to know a little bit and apply it a lot than to know a lot and apply it a little. And I say that because I want everyone who, out of their mouths and in their mind and in their heart, who says that they are serious about the uplift of our people, please get involved in the lives of at least one child. And I don't just mean that in the sense of the lives of your child or your children. I would mindfully say that that should be a natural given opportunity and want. And I know the reality of it is not always the case. And in that sense, can we please check and correct each other on that? And I say that because there are a lot of children who are hurt. There are a lot of children who are lost. A lot of children who just might not have the answer to what this life thing is about. And yet we put the onus on them to have it figured out when we don't give them the proper tools to build the self. And then when they don't build the self, then we criticize and ridicule them for it. And maybe they're just looking for that one person, just somebody, you and me, to help give them a little bit of direction and understanding of what they can be, because I'm sure they've seen it in their own minds. But when society says that they're not supposed to be the person in their mind, then a lot of times they don't become the person in their mind. They become the person in society. That is a direct result of how we need to apply our knowledge to the children who need it the most. And I'm not just saying walk up to a child and say, look, I could teach you how to speak Hebrew. Hey, look, I could show you the verses of the Bible and break it down for you. What we need to do is understand the realistic world our children live in and realize the situations they go through and the lack of value they feel for themselves oftentimes, and know how to tap into a place beyond that within them to help them pull through self-esteem issues, self-valuing issues, self-debasing thoughts and feelings that they face on a minute-to-minute basis each day. And I always say, and I stand firm right now, and I will always stand firm in saying this, and that is, there is no such thing as a bad child. I cannot stand to hear somebody say, my kid's bad as hell. No, there's no such thing as a bad child. You have children who are put in bad situations to no fault of their own, and they become a product of what they are around, and they become that. So you only have children in bad situations, but you don't have bad children. We need to change our way of thinking on that and doing something about that, because if we don't, our future as one African people, if you want to call us unified or divided in a million ways, our future is bleak because we're not ensuring that the ones who are going to carry out the mission of Black liberation, we're not ensuring that they are prepared enough to carry out the liberation of themselves. So please become involved in the lives of children, even if it's just one child. Become involved in that child's life. Show that child how to actualize their perfect self. Because I promise you, you will learn how to maximize your perfect self in the process of it. So, that being said, we get back to the information pertaining to the lesson. In going through a lot of the Hebrew words, you see brothers sometimes translate the words like, you know, they add A in between all of the consonants, and that somehow corrects the Yiddish that's spoken by the so-called Hebrews and Jews now. So instead of saying David or something like that, they say Dawood, and then they say Dawad, or whatever the case might be, and you might see it pretty often. That in itself is still based on the premise that the language, the way it's written, is understood as its original form. And that's not the case if you decide to do that in the translation of the words. Now, don't get me wrong. If you want to correct the white person on speaking our language, by all means, I don't care if you say it 100% backwards. But when we disseminate it amongst one another, if you do that with them to try to challenge them, that's fine. But when we're teaching it to one another, we need to come in right now in proper knowledge. So we have to understand exactly not only why these words are written the way they are, but where they came from, even if they were orally spoken and not written at a point in time. So, again, going back to those two words that I mispronounced, Ajbara and Ishbora. Ajbara, I said, means strength, and Ishbora, I said, means power in Yoruba. Once I was corrected, and with a lot of practice that I still need to practice now, the young lady corrected me and said the proper pronunciations for those words are Akbara and Ikbora. A very abrupt glottal stop with the ak. In the Akan, the Shui language, you'll see this letter combination as KP. And the KP are equivalent to GB. So let's say, for instance, if you're going through Hebrew and you see something written as GB, guess what? Look at the Akan. You may find the translation in KP. So, giving some examples of what I mean by this, the first word I want to give is spelled in the Hebrew language Gimel Ba Wa Lamed. So that would normally be pronounced Gabol. And it means something that's cut off from something else. It means a boundary line. Well, what Gimel Ba Wa Lamed actually spells in Yoruba is Akbede. Akbede. Well, you might first say, well, you'll see in Lamed, which is L in Hebrew, and then the end of the Yoruba word is a D. Well, if you do the study of the Bantu rules and the language rules, you'll know that D and L are often tonally the same when spoken. The reason being is because the words are formed, I think it's called dentolabially. So you take the tongue to the roof of the mouth. When you put the tongue on the roof of the mouth, your tongue is touching your teeth. That's why it's called dentolabial. And they are both what you call plosive. Instead of sucking in air, you do it out. So de, le. So anyway, in spoken word, when you speak it at regular speed, the words or the letter combinations sometimes are interchangeable. So again, the word that we often pronounce gabol for boundary in Hebrew is actually akbede in Yoruba. Another example is the word gimel ba yod ayin, pronounced oftentimes in Hebrew as gabya or gabaya. And that word means cup. In Yoruba, it's actually separated and then reformed. And those words would be ago and abo. And what that would indicate is at a point in time, the G and the B of ago and abo were both fused together, and you get akbo for the word cup. So then we get to another word that's spelled Gimel Ba Yod Ra He. And oftentimes in the Hebrew language, as we pronounce it Gabira. And this is meant to be the queen mother or the principal mother or the principal woman, specifically representing a high place of the woman or the mother. This would be pronounced, well, this would actually be the same as saying Oba Biri. But when you look at how that's broken down, that Biri is Biri or Biri. And it's also Baring or Akbiri. Now, being that it's in a gluttonous term formed from Ba, which means to spread, GBA. So that's the Gimel Ba, it's Ba. And then that's added to the word Iri or Eden, which means the gender, sexual organ of a female. So the word that we are actually pronouncing represents a concept to spread by the gender and sexual organs of the female. So if you're the principal mother, that means you are the one who is first or highest, and you give birth to all of those who follow. It also represents a woman, becoming fertilized or pregnant. But that word pronunciation, as we pronounce in Hebrew, Gabira, Gimel, Ba, Yod, Ra, He, would actually be pronounced Biri or Akbarin. So another example that I'll get into is the word spelled Gimel, Ba, Ain, He. And that word, as we pronounce it, is Gaba in the so-called Hebrew language, and it would mean hill. Well, in Yoruba, that word would be pronounced Be, and it means to lift into an erect position. So obviously, if you look at a hill is lifted up into an erect position. So then we get into a word that not necessarily follows the GB, the B sound, but it's a very interesting translation for me. And that would be in Hebrew spelled Mem Ba Wa Lamed. And that would be pronounced as we, learning the Hebrew that we learn, Mabol. Mabol. And that means a flood, the deluge. And if you look into the Torah, it'll actually say the Mabol when it's talking about the flood for Noah and everything. But what that word actually spells in Bantu is Mvula. M-V-U-L-A. Mvula. And that means water, that means a flood or a lot of water, deep waters. The reason why I bring that up is because that is also another letter combination that we separate when we say ma bol or ma vol, when it's actually bol or vol as in mvula. So another example I would like to give as far as breaking up the letter combinations and whatnot in pronunciation, showing that it doesn't have to necessarily be gimel ba in Hebrew to make the same letter sound. But also, again, going back to the Akan, you see something with the KP, KB or something like that, it will be a similar pronunciation. So I say that because in Hebrew, the word is spelled Ain, Kuf, Ba, He. And it's supposed to mean cunning and something insidious or to use your wits about something to try to overdo something else. We often pronounce that Akaba. And that would translate into the Yoruba language as Okbon. Okbon. Spelled O-G-B-O-N. Now, when we look at this particular word, it doesn't have, again, the Gimel Ba letter combination. But what we're looking at is tonal, spoken words when we're talking about our translation. So the Kuf or the Q and the B, QB, is actually pronounced with the same letter combination, GB, because G, K, Q, they're all similar in pronunciation. As far as those examples of the GB, QB, and whatnot, I think, I'm going to go through further aspects of Hebrew language and see if I can find some more of those examples, because I feel like once you hit on that correction, I think that will open another door as far as how we can translate how we speak Hebrew and finding words that may have been out of our sight because we were separating the letters. And I think that can add depth into our study when we translate. So I'll give another, not necessarily the GB, but I'll go into some more vocabulary as far as the Hebrew translating into Bantu in general. And the word I'll use, which is a ubiquitous word in Hebrew, and that would be the word for milk, which is often pronounced in the Hebrew as we're taught it as chalav or chalab. And as we know, B and V are the same word or the same letter. And even in Hebrew, there's no change in that letter. It's either pronounced B or V. So milk, chalav, as we're taught, is derived from what I found from the Bantu root, which is elle. And elle, as we know, the L and R is also pronounced ere. And that means breast, and it means milk, because obviously the breast produces milk. This would, if you look throughout the languages, you see, if you see the letters, which would be KH, L, B, or V again, then if you spell that backwards, or you pronounce that backwards, you will get the word bereke, or beleke, and that means milk from female's breast. And the reason that means that is because the word bere means milk or breast, and K, as in mke, is a significant or it signifies a female. So the unke, even when you say a queen, it could be unke we mfome. So that unke or k is in representation of a female. So again, the word bere, milk and breast, plus k, which is the indication of a female, would give the word bereke. Now, in isiZulu, the word for breast is ibele. So again, berle and bere being the same word. And in Chibemba, it's also ibele. They just changed the L and the R. So if we take it to the Tamil language, the word pal, P-A-A-L, if you add the suffix KKA, ka, that represents a human being, together would give palka, which means the milk from a human being. So then, again, the B and the P, same letter, depending on the plosiveness. So I could say ba and pa, or like ba. You can even find a letter combination in between. So in Kikongo, excuse me, the word breast is also bele. So then we say mabele, M-A-B-E-L-E, mabele is plural for breast. When you think about it, I always try to throw a little bit of analysis here and there when we do the lessons about how some of our modern day English words that we use might have come from Bantu and we just don't get credit for it, or come from African language and we just don't get credit for it. If you look at it, this word, bele, bere, bareke, berleke, the M and the B are interchangeable. And to me, it seems that over time, those who were listening to us speak our languages and then translating it back and transliterating it in their language, whether written or spoken, they at a time could have said bilka or bilk and then turned around and the B became the M, it became milk. So I'm thinking literally the word milk actually comes from this word that we're speaking and that we're translating. So that's just, I'm not saying that I found definitive information on that, but in seeing certain things, sometimes if it pops out, maybe it's the case. If you get the gut feeling, maybe it's the case. So go ahead and share it and see if you can find a little bit more on it. And also in adding to that, the Yoruba word, from my understanding, for milk is wara, which would represent breast or breast milk. So the W and the B being the same again, and instead of B-E-R-E, you get W-A-R-A. Same word. So now we have the Hebrew word that's spelled Hey Noon, and as many pronounce as Hana or Han or something of the sort. But when we look at it in Bantu, where this word actually translates to behold. So when we look at it in Bantu, that HN or Hey Noon would actually be pronounced Kona. As we know, the K, KH, and H are all interchangeable. Kona or Kona means to see, to look at. It means to notice. It means to be focused on. So if you tell somebody to behold, that means you're telling them to look, focus on this. And it's the same thing as Kona. And again, things that pop out as you go, to me it seems that the word that we use for hone, to hone in on something, comes from kona. Hona, kona. Because when you hone in on something, you set your sights on just that. You behold it, you focus on it, and you target it. So I think that English word specifically came and directly came from Bantu as kona. Now, I'll end it off with a translation that I've been trying to get brothers and sisters to correct in their own usages, specifically speaking about Hebrew Israelites and Muslims, for instance, or Muslim. Because when you do your thing, have no problem. But when we misteach it to our own people, then that's when we gotta, go back and double check and correct. And don't ever get me wrong. I'm not saying that any of the information that I find is the end all be all correct information. Hence why I'm doing this lesson thanking the young lady that corrected me in being wrong. So don't think that that's what I'm saying. But some things that I do say, or everything that I do say, I want us to go take a deeper look at to see if there is some fact behind it. Most of what I'm saying about this next word, which I'll go into as the Hebrews pronounce Dawadad, Dawid, Dawad, or David as their progenitor. The reason why I'm bringing this word into play is because in speaking with Yoruba, I've heard a lot of different things about, who original deities were, original ancestors were. I know a lot of times, in specific, Hebrews are very patriarchal. And a lot of Yoruba I speak to are very patriarchal. But some of the more traditional ones say that that's not correct, that was infused into the culture. Because at a point they were matriarchal. And the reason why I bring up Dawadad, Dalit wa Dalit, Dawid, Dawad, David, is because if you look at the consonants, DWD, that actually spells Oduduwa or Odudwa, depending on how you shorten it. Now, a lot of Yoruba that I've spoken to say Odudwa, Oduduwa was a king, a warrior king. But as again, those who say that that was infused aver that Oduduwa is female. And I put in a lesson, or actually I think it was one of the questions that I put out for the Moors, when I said Oduduwa means she who is perfect black. And only the blackest of Yoruba women could be Obabiri, queen. So when looking at it, as we recall from lesson 402, the word Hebrew, Ayin Bait Ra, Yod Mem, or as they pronounce Ibrim, Ivrim, whatever the case might be, we already said and we've shown that means Omo Yoruba. Now, if they say that the progenitor of the Hebrews is David and Dawud was royal, then if we have corrected the word Hebrew to mean Yoruba, and Yoruba say that their progenitor is Oduduwa, then that would make sense that the so-called Dawadad, Dawid would be David to the Hebrews, but in actuality it's Oduduwa to Yoruba. So we'll do further research on that to find some of the details, because in sifting through a lot of the information, we still have the brothers and sisters, which I'm not knocking, but I just can't agree with, from what I found personally myself. We still have brothers and sisters who are trying to defend this book as actual history. But if I know from not only research within that book, but as Phil Valentine said, peripheral study outside that book, away from the rubric of the Bible, the rubric of the Quran, and all of these, quote, holy texts. If you find that the information debunks a lot of the so-called truth and fact in the books, then you have to use good sense. So my good sense says to listen to the traditional Yoruba who are telling me that Oduduwa is a woman. And my sense is saying that David, Dawud is Oduduwa. So I'll make that the end of lesson 410. I know I was kind of all over the place with this one here, but I've been wanting to speak to you all for a while. But take the information that we spoke about seriously as far as the translations. But to me, even more importantly, take what I said in the beginning seriously, because that's our future. And to the sister that corrected my incorrect pronunciation, I'm forever thankful for you. I'm quite sure I mispronounced some more things when it comes down to the diacritics in Yoruba. One language that is very difficult for me to learn. When it comes down to the diacritics, I mispronounce those. I will look forward to another video of you correcting me. And I'm actually going to post a link of the video, the Akbara video, at the bottom of this one. And I want you all please to check it out and pay love to the sister. So with that said, Hambakale.